Have you ever picked up a new pair of trainers, maybe for running or, just for everyday comfort,
Yeah.
and noticed that term midsole drop on the label?
Mm, mm.
And you kind of think, what is that exactly? And more importantly, why should you care about a few millimeters?
Well, it seems like a small detail, but it's actually a measurement that can have pretty significant effects on your body's mechanics, far beyond just your feet.
Right, that's really the core of it. Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're digging into the fascinating world of shoe drop.
Yeah, we've looked at quite a bit of biomechanical research expert takes. We're really exploring how shoe drop affects everything, your foot health, your movement patterns overall.
Exactly. Our mission today is to sort of demystify this technical term, turn it into clear insights you can actually use, give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed. We'll look at what drop is, its biomechanical impact, and crucially, why it matters for finding the right shoe for your activity, whether that's running, walking, whatever you do.
We've really gone into the science behind it, midsole drop in running shoes, but also its wider impact. It's surprisingly complex, but it connects directly to how we all move.
Okay, so let's jump right in. What exactly is drop? You hear it called heel-to-toe drop, midsole drop.
Mm.
What are we talking about?
Right, so it's basically the difference in height between the heel part of the shoe and the forefoot part of the shoe. Simple as that.
Okay.
And it's measured in millimeters. So, for example, a 10-millimeter drop just means the heel sits 10 millimeters higher off the ground than the forefoot does inside the shoe.
Gotcha. And then you hear about zero drop shoes.
Exactly. Zero drop means the heel and the forefoot are at the exact same height. So a 0 millimeter difference level.
Okay, now this is where it gets really interesting, I think. How does this seemingly tiny difference immediately change how your body, deals with hitting the ground? Let's talk foot strike.
Yeah, that's a big one. So lower drop shoes and definitely zero drop shoes, they tend to encourage you to land more on your forefoot or your midfoot.
Whereas the higher drop shoes?
Those really push you towards a heel strike pattern. They make it easier, more natural to land on your heel first.
And why does that initial contact point matter so much?
Well, it fundamentally changes how the forces, the impact forces, spread up through your feet and legs. It's the very first interaction. And immediately with zero drop shoes, research shows they tend to reduce the peak stress on the patellofemoral joint. That's your knee joint, basically.
Oh, knee stress. Okay.
Yeah, less immediate stress on the knee compared to higher drop shoes. They also reduce what's called negative work at the knee joint.
This sounds like a definite plus, potentially lowering knee injury risk for some people.
Potentially, yes. For some, it might lower the risk of certain knee injuries or maybe even muscle fatigue around the knee. But it's not quite that simple.
Okay, what's the catch?
Well, it's more of a redistribution.
Well,
While zero drop shoes take some load off the knee, they do increase the load on the ankle and the hip joints. So the work gets shifted, essentially, away from the knee but onto other parts of the leg.
right, so it's moving the stress around. That's the immediate picture. What about over the long haul? How does the body adapt?
This is absolutely crucial. The adaptation period. If you're changing shoe types, especially going down and drop, you have to do it gradually. Your body really needs time to adjust to those different forces and mechanics, otherwise you risk injury.
And it does adjust, right? Like if someone uses zero drop shoes long term.
Oh yeah, definitely. Long-term use typically leads to a more consistent forefoot strike. You also see a decrease in stance time, how long your foot is on the ground, and an increase in the foot strike index, which basically measures how far forward on the foot you're landing. It shows a real shift in running gait over time.
Okay, but here's a twist you mentioned earlier. The knee stress.
Yes, this is fascinating. While zero drops might lower knee stress initially, some studies suggest long-term use can actually increase that PFJ stress, the knee stress.
Really? Why would that happen?
It's likely due to those adaptations we talked about, changes in muscle strength in the lower leg, how your whole leg moves differently after months or years. Your body adapts, but maybe not always in the way that keeps knee stress lowest long-term. It's complex.
It really shows it's not a simple better or worse. It depends. What about other joints? You mentioned the MTP joint.
Right, the metatarsophalangeal joint, that's the big joint at the base of your toes. Zero drop shoes over time seem to decrease the load on that MTP joint. This could potentially mean less energy is needed or spent in that specific area during push-off.
Okay, so shifting loads, adaptation. This brings us to the big question. Injury risk.
Yeah.
Who actually benefits from which type of drop?
Well, there was a large randomized controlled trial, a really significant study, and it found that overall, for the general running population, shoe drop didn't significantly change the overall risk of getting injured.
Huh, that's surprising. So low drop isn't some magic bullet against injuries.
Not universally, no, but here's where the nuance comes in, especially for runners. The study found that low drop shoes were actually associated with a lower injury risk for occasional runners.
Occasional runners, why them?
The thinking is maybe it encourages a gentler, more natural gait for people who aren't running super frequently, less repetitive stress, perhaps. And this is the paradox, for regular runners, those running consistently for over 6 months, low drop shoes were linked to a higher injury risk.
Wow, okay, that flips the script.
Yeah,
So experience and frequency matter hugely.
absolutely. It highlights how important individual factors and that adaptation process really are.
Okay, let's break down some specific health areas. Knee and hip health.
Right, so high drop shoes tend to shift more load towards the knee and the hip. This could be an issue if you already have knee or hip problem.
But as a flip side for the Achilles.
Exactly. High drop shoes can actually be beneficial if you have Achilles tendon issues like tendinopathy or chronic tightness. That higher heel essentially puts the Achilles on a bit more slack, reducing the tension on it.
That's a really important point for a lot of people. So what about the lower drop shoes and the lower leg?
Low drop or zero drop shoes definitely increase the demands on your foot, your ankle, and your lower leg muscles like your calves. Now, over time, this can strengthen those areas, which is good, but it also raises the risk of things like Achilles tendon injuries or calf strains, especially if you switch too quickly without that gradual adaptation. Big warning sign there.
Makes sense. And what about problems actually in the forefoot, like pain under the ball of the foot?
Yeah, conditions like sesamoiditis, that's inflammation of little bones near your big toe, or just general metatarsal pain. For those issues, high drop shoes can sometimes make things worse because they tend to increase pressure on the forefoot, especially during the push-off phase.
So it's clear this isn't just about elite runners. This affects anyone walking, moving. The way your foot meets the ground matters. Let's talk practicalities. What are some common drop levels we see in shoes?
Okay, good idea. You often see high drop shoes, typically defined as being somewhere in the 8 to 12 millimeter range.
All right, like the Brooks Trace 4 you mentioned, that's 12 millimeter.
Yep.
And the New Balance 990, also 12 millimeter. What are these like?
These usually have quite a bit of extra cushioning in the heel. They often feel like what people think of as traditional running shoes or sneakers. They're generally good for people who naturally land on their heel first,
Okay.
or maybe for people just starting out with more specialized athletic shoes. And like we said, potentially good if you have tight calves or known Achilles issues, because that heel lift reduces the stretch.
Got it. Then there's the middle ground. Medium drop.
Yeah, medium drop, usually around 4 to 8 millimeters. These try to offer more balanced cushioning between the heel and the front.
Who are these typically good for?
They often work well for a lot of different runners and walkers. They can be a really good transition point if you're currently in a high drop shoe but want to try moving lower gradually. They tend to be pretty versatile for different kinds of activities, faster stuff, longer stuff.
Okay. And then the low drop category.
Right, low drop. That's anything from 0 millimeter up to about 4 millimeter. These are the shoes that really encourage that midfoot or forefoot landing. They often give you a feeling of being more connected to the ground, less shoe between you and the surface.
And the benefit here is potentially strengthening those lower leg muscles, maybe improving form.
That's the idea, yeah, for people wanting to work on those aspects. And we have to keep saying this, the key is slow, gradual adaptation. You absolutely cannot just jump from a 12 millimeter drop shoe into a zero drop shoe for your normal routine. That's asking for trouble.
Definitely sounds like a recipe for injury if you rush it. Okay, so putting this all together, how does someone listening figure out the right midsole drop for them?
Well, the first thing to say is there is no single best drop for everyone. It really, really depends on your individual body, your injury history, what you're doing in the shoes.
So what factors should you consider?
Think about your current shoes. How do they feel? Are they causing any pain or problems? That's clue number one. If you have existing foot pain or injuries, definitely talk to a professional, a physio, a podiatrist, someone knowledgeable.
And your goals matter too, right? Running fast versus long distance versus just walking comfort.
Absolutely. What are you trying to achieve? Short, fast runs might feel different than long, slow miles. Comfort for walking all day has different demands. And importantly, try to get a sense of your natural foot landing pattern. Do you tend to land heel first, middle, or more towards the front?
You mentioned a couple of specific examples earlier, the Propet Tour Knit FX.
Yeah, that one has a 10 millimeter drop, so it falls into that higher category. It could be a decent starting point for someone new to this kind of footwear, or maybe transitioning down slightly from an even higher drop. It aims for a mix of cushioning and support, still with that noticeable heel lift.
And the New Balance 9 and 90, 12 millimeter drop.
Right, that's a real classic, often favored by experienced runners who like that traditional, highly cushioned feel. Lots of support. Often good for long runs, and again, potentially helpful for those with histories of calf or Achilles problems because of that significant drop.
So trying them on is key.
Crucial. My best advice is don't just guess based on numbers. Go to a specialty running store if you can.
Hmm.
A good store will have staff who can watch you walk or run, maybe even on a treadmill, and let you try shoes with different drops. Feeling how they affect your movement is invaluable.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try and summarize the key takeaways here. Shoe drop, that heel-to-toe height difference, is a really critical design feature. It definitely affects your biomechanics when you run or walk.
Right. High drop shoes might help with Achilles strain, but could put more stress on knees and hips for some. Low drop or zero drop shoes might be better for knee health, encourage a more natural foot motion, but they absolutely require careful adaptation. Rushing into them increases risk for Achilles or calf injuries.
And the long-term health impact is really truly individual. Depends entirely on how your specific body responds and adapts over time.
Exactly. It's all about how the load gets distributed and how your tissues handle it.
So we've seen how just a few millimeters difference can cascade into these significant shifts in movement and stress patterns throughout your body. It's kind of amazing, isn't it?
It really is.
So the next time you lace up your shoes, think about this. Beyond just the comfort, beyond the style, what's that subtle biomechanical conversation your shoes are having with your body? After hearing all this, what stands out to you as maybe the most surprising piece of this puzzle? Understanding this stuff really empowers you to make smarter choices for your own long-term health and how you move.